Studios in Washington is author and historian Dr. Webster Griffin Tarpley. Many thanks for joining us here on Press TV, Dr. Tarpley. Now, some analysts believe that a buffer zone would be a declaration of war on a part of the Turkish government, as it would require the militarization of the border area. Do you agree with that assessment?
I think that's right, and that may be even understating the danger. This is an act of incalculable folly on the part of Prime Minister Erdogan and Foreign Minister Davutoglu. I've been looking at reports from the Associated Press, from Reuters, the Washington Post, all suggesting that there's been a meeting between Obama and Erdogan on the occasion of that conference on controlling nuclear materials in South Korea, and that some kind of a deal has been struck in this direction. We should be very clear. The so-called buffer zone is a euphemism for an act of war. It means occupying a strip of Syrian territory. The idea being that the NATO-backed death squads, along with their fellow travelers, the various deserters and fanatics and other people, mercenaries that they've accumulated, would then use that buffer zone for further actions against Syria. But if you do that, of course, you've simply moved the line, and at that point it would become a fighting front, and if the Syrians shoot back, they'd be shooting against the Turkish forces. So it's a big step towards war. Maybe not automatically, but one or two steps further down the road, you can see a war. I recall a conversation I had last November in Beirut with General Aoun of Lebanon, very experienced military man. He pointed out that Turkey is the last country in the world that should be looking for foreign adventures like this. They have one split, which is between the political parties, which are Islamic, and the generals, which are secular. But they've also got a 25% of their population who are Kurds. Now, if it looks like Syria is going to break up and be attacked by NATO, the Kurds will rise in rebellion, and that rebellion will spread into Turkey.
Well, yes, that brings me to the next question, Dr. As most rebels are from a Kurdish background, would you also say that this may be a step two in Western plans for propping up a pro-U.S. Kurdish state in the region?
If you get a de facto Kurdish entity in northern Iraq, a de facto Kurdish entity in northern Syria, then there's going to be a gravitational pull on the Kurds in Turkey to join that, to say nothing of Iran. And you can see through this what the goal of the imperialists is. The adventurism and the lunacy of the imperialists has reached a new height. The rebellion in Syria has essentially been defeated. The Syrian army is now in the process of mopping up these NATO-backed death squads and the fellow travelers. That's happened in Homs, it's happened in Idlib, it's happened in Daraa, it's happened also along that Iraq to Syria border. But now, in some bid to snatch something from the jaws of defeat, Obama and Hillary Clinton seem to be shooting the works, but they're doing it at Turkish expense. This is the key thing. This is known as buck passing. This is essentially playing Turkey against Syria and possibly other countries with the goal of destroying all of them. This is the kind of thing that Zbigniew Brzezinski is noted for. Don't have the U.S. attack Syria or some other country, maybe Iran, but get Turkey to do it, and then you can arbitrate the entire thing. You can destroy all of the parties involved.
Hello everyone, welcome back to GGN. This is part 2 of these news bulletins for today, June 29th, 2012. Alright, so I know some people hate Tarpley, some people love him, some people don't care too much about him, but I just thought I'd include it in there because, you know, it's a good timeline. It does let you know what's going on. That's why I like covering this Middle East stuff, because it's interesting what's going on, and eventually, it doesn't directly affect us here in the United States, but it's good to know, get a pulse of what's going on in the world, especially something that can spark off a nuclear war, right? Because you will know probably before a lot of other people who read the mainstream news and just watch television, you're going to have a pretty good idea of how close it's actually getting to this. So, as it was covered in that first video, Turkey wants to create a buffer zone on the border with Syria. Turkey's negotiating with the United States and NATO to create a buffer zone on the border with Syria. To this end, Turkey has been drawing up military equipment to the border for several days, a senior official of the U.S. Department told Turkish Vatican newspaper. Of course, the official said that Turkey has also demanded NATO member countries to create a no-fly zone over Syria. And lastly, in turn, an unnamed Turkish diplomat directly engaged in the Syrian crisis confirmed that creating a no-fly zone over Syria is really being discussed. Bashar al-Assad will annihilate terrorists in Syria. That's what he says. He has a duty to annihilate the terrorists to protect his people, and ruled out any solution to the crisis imposed from outside the country, including Russia. Said that they will not back him still. But they are. Russia is meeting with Hillary Clinton, and Turkey's out in Switzerland. Yeah, I think it's like their vice premier or something like vice president, vice premier in Turkey. Their next main guy is in Switzerland, so he's probably working up a deal with the Central Bank of the World, the Bank of International Settlements, to see how much loans they can get for arms. And yeah, Russia's trying to push that Annan plan. That's not going to work. It was never meant to work. It was meant to buy time so they can get all the rebels in there, create more instability so they can get a regime change. You know, it's like if the West really wanted to end, if they really wanted the violence to end, they wouldn't really care about regime change, but all they care about is creating the violence so they can get a regime change. So 190 killed in Syria uprising's bloodiest day. So Assad will annihilate terrorists in Syria. Well, he has. It says as many as 190 are believed to have been killed in Syria yesterday, including up to 139 civilians. Well, most of these people that are the quote rebels are civilians. So, and what activists said was the deadliest day of the uprising so far. It's not an uprising, right? It's not a spring uprising, an Arab Spring. Well, it is kind of. It is the same type of intelligence, Western-backed, basically operation. It's an invasion. So it says here, yeah, casualties poured in from across the country. It says here, as Assad's forces clash with the invaders, basically the terrorists, the Free Syrian Army. But it says here the heaviest were the most Sunni city of Douma. So yeah, you know. Remember what I said in the last video, sectarian war, civil war. Turkey deploys anti-aircraft guns, rocket launchers to Syrian border. Troops are piling up on both sides of the Syria-Turkey border as tensions escalate. Both Turkey and Syria have reportedly sent troops to their shared border in the aftermath of the downing of a Turkish jet last week. So we just covered the with the 190 rebel terrorists that were killed, the little basically conflict or little battle that went on, but it says they stayed away from the new Turkish defenses on the border. The last statement that Assad gave was that we're in a state of war. It says here, NATO member Turkey harboring terrorist army warns. I don't know if you remember me covering this last time on Wednesday after losing a fighter jet earlier this month while conducting a high-speed, low-altitude invasion of Syria's airspace. Turkey has now pledged to treat any Syrian operation along its border as a military threat. Syrian rebels are al-Qaeda terrorists by U.S.'s own admissions. Since 2007, a combined U.S.-Israeli-Saudi effort to assemble and deploy against Syria and Iran an army of sectarian extremists drawn from the ranks of al-Qaeda and its affiliates has been underway. They call it, in Seymour Hersh's article, the redirection. And like we just covered before with the tanks, anti-aircraft guns, troops on the border, as far as Turkey goes, Turkey is playing a pivotal role in psychologically breaking Syria. It says here, Syria, by remaining united and exhibiting perseverance, will defeat NATO aggression. I don't know why this came to mind, but it's kind of like the EU. If the Eurozone breaks apart, it's actually bad for the powers that be. Everything always works in their favor, but I think they want to keep that going, so it'd be better to see it broken apart. Just like with Syria, it'll work in their favor if they break up Syria, right? Or even if they stay together, they probably still work into their favor. But it would be better if they can stay together and NATO loses. Well, I just thought about it. This is a very extremist statement. You know, I could be hauled away for that. Then we have this. Syria needs a vigilante to save its people. Says the world should bypass the United Nations because it's politically paralyzed. Ooh, see, the UN isn't strong enough. I love these arguments about the United Nations not being strong enough. They want them to have fangs, is what they want. And this is the thing. You'll probably never actually see the United Nations get that much power because there's so many people that are in fear of global government as if it doesn't exist. So they like using these these councils and these NGOs and stuff like that as little proxy governments, you know, to basically supersede national sovereign governments. A vigilante that defends the innocent when the police can't or won't is not a villain. He is a hero. So it says here, IDF fears terror attacks on Syrian border. It says here, Israeli army officials say global jihad may take advantage of the possible regime change in Damascus to launch cross-border attacks from the remote region. So gunmen kill university professor, family members in Syria's Homs. It says here, armed groups assassinated a university professor and 5 of her family members on the outskirts of the central city of Homs Thursday, state-run Sana news agency reported. He was what? A professor at the Faculty of Engineering and Petrochemical. Was killed when armed groups, that's the rebels, stormed the house and shot her along with her family members, including 3 children. So Syrian government forces clashed with the armed men after the murder, killing 10 of them. Well, they killed a lot more. Remember that number earlier. It says here, Mossad blamed again after killing a senior Hamas agent. The death of the agent at his home in Damascus has sparked a series of claims and counterclaims about the identity of his killers, with some officials in the militant group blaming Mossad, Israel's intelligence service. Alright, so here's something interesting that I found about this whole Turkish jet that was going down invading in Syrian airspace. Plane shot down by Syria was not carrying any weapons, says the Turkish, was this foreign minister. So, and then I found this. Helmets found, but no pilots. So there was no weapons, and there was no pilots. So what the hell kind of plane was this, right? So I haven't seen any news about the pilots being found. Maybe they were, but it hasn't really made mainstream news. It says here, but there's still no signs of the pilots themselves. So next up, Israel persuaded Russia not to sell Syria missiles. So it goes on here, and it says they influenced the cancellation of sale of the S-300 surface-to-air missile systems to Damascus worth $100 million. And you remember about the shipment of, I don't know what it was, helicopters or something like that from Russia that was turned back because of an insurance company in Russia. So a lot of stuff is not making its way through. And I don't know if it was, you know, Russia actually got persuaded or basically they were kind of coerced, but it says here Russia approves a NATO hub. I mean, remember Canada, the story about Canada and Russia doing surveillance ops over there for their military and critical infrastructure? It's like, what the hell, dude? But, you know, it says here Russian government has given approval for the United States and NATO allies to use the Russian air base at the Volga city as a hub for transits to and from Afghanistan. So, yeah, it goes on here to spark protests in the city, and they said here that the officials have sought to allay fears that the hub would turn out to be a fully fledged base, like Iraq, right? Or like Afghanistan itself in the mission that we're going to be pulling out. Well, they're never going to, and they've admitted that. India seeks larger role in stabilizing Afghanistan after NATO drawdown. So here you go, India now in the picture, and Russia for Afghanistan. Officer, we are preparing for possibility of war, so Israeli Defense Force says he's bracing for the likelihood of a terror attack on Syrian border. So Israel is preparing for war. They're holding the biggest exercise with the United States. They got U.S. troops over there. Saudi king puts military on state high alert. So the king has reportedly ordered security forces to be on state of a high alert due to what they consider tense situation in the Middle East. So the Chinese army is saying that war with the United States is imminent. He offered an alarming assessment that the future conflict with the U.S. is coming as a result of the U.S. containment policies, maybe the South China Sea. Machine guns, not just for soldiers anymore. So it says here that they're actually looking at Gatling machine guns. So online netizens are saying, well, who are the police going to be mowing down with this gun? China starts combat-ready patrols in the disputed Yellow Sea, while South Caucasus countries' integration into NATO discussed in Brussels. And look at this. Russia gets its armed forces ready in the Caucasus. Talking about NGOs earlier, Parliament of Russia to label externally funded NGOs as foreign agents. They would have to disclose their functions to Russian citizens, and the law already exists in US, France, and Israel. And we have Iran ships to be equipped with 300-kilometer anti-radar missiles. Panetta pleads for missile defense dollars. This is for the NATO missile shield in Eastern Europe. Turkey to pick new missile defense systems soon. as the State Department in the U.S. is planning to spend $115 million to upgrade a $700 million U.S. embassy in Iraq. A drone strike in Pakistan destroys a house and kills 6, as 74% of Pakistanis view U.S. as an enemy. 29 killed in Somalia drone strike and 46 more killed yesterday. Thanks.